Hello everyone, my name is Edry Pena and I am one of HECPA's interns this year. For those who don't know, HECPA is the Hispanic and Latin Employee Council of Foreign Affairs Agency. It's a nonprofit organization supporting employees affiliated with the U.S. Department of State. HECPA works to promote the recruitment, retention, and career advancement of Hispanics and promote a foreign affairs workforce that reflects the diversity of the United States. Today I'm with my diplomat in residence, Mr. James Bland. I'll let him introduce himself in a second, but right now we're at the Croft Institute at the University of Mississippi, and the point of this video is to discuss opportunities for students, undergraduate and graduate students, and any of those who are interested in a career at the Department of State. So for the first question, if you could introduce yourself and maybe speak a little bit about what is a diplomat in residence.
Sure. So my name is J. Nathan Bland. I am the U.S. Department of State's diplomat in residence for the Central South region, which is Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas, and Oklahoma. And what that means is that I am a State Department recruiter. I am an actual diplomat. I'm a U.S. Foreign Service officer, and I've served abroad in several tours, including China, Italy, Belize, Mexico, D.C., and now I'm back in my home state of Louisiana, responsible for doing the recruitment for the U.S. Department of State in those states that I mentioned. And that's the role of a diplomat in residence. We have 16 of us throughout the whole country, each of us responsible for our own geographic territory. And we're there as resources to students, to young professionals, and anyone who is interested in U.S. Department of State careers and our student programs.
Great, that's awesome. So my second question is, what has your career path looked like?
So I started off with student programs. I'm a strong advocate of our student programs. Our internships, our fellowships, our study abroad programs, I view them as being one of the best ways to get your foot in the door at the Department of State. So I found out about the department when I was studying abroad in Hong Kong. It was an advertisement in a magazine. It just said, "Be the face of America to the world." And I had just finished doing that when I was teaching English in Xinjiang, China, and I thought, if I can make a career out of it, then I might as well. So I took the exam, the Foreign Service Officer test, didn't pass it the first time, and I was crushed when I didn't pass it, but I didn't realize at the time that was not abnormal, that a lot of people don't pass it the first time. So I went back to graduate school. I did an unpaid internship with the State Department. Now all of our internships are paid for, fortunately, for everybody nowadays. But back then I did an unpaid internship. Then I did another program called the Presidential Management Fellowship, and then eventually passed my exam on the third time and joined the Foreign Service. And since then I've served abroad. I did my first 2 years. I did a consular assignment in China. I did 2 years at the U.S. Embassy to the Vatican. Then I was back in D.C. for 3 years doing environmental issues from the international angle. Then I was in Belize doing political and economic affairs, and then I was in Mexico City doing management work. And now I'm here.
It's a really interesting career. So my next question is, what are some internships or fellowships available to undergraduates and graduate students?
So we have a wide range of, like I said, internships, fellowships, and study abroad. On the undergrad level, for both undergrad and graduate level, we have the U.S. Department of State Student Internship Program that you can start applying for your sophomore year, as long as you'll be a junior by the time you finish doing the actual internship. So from sophomores all the way up through graduate school students, they can apply for that one. We have fall, summer, and spring internships. They can be done domestically or overseas at one of our embassies or consulates. Everything is paid for. This is one of the coolest things about the internships now, is that Congress acted on the realization that unpaid internships were a barrier for people who weren't already wealthy enough to do an unpaid internship somewhere. So they have made sure that all of our internships now have the transportation paid for, the housing is paid for wherever you go, whether it be domestic or overseas, and your salary. You get a salary that's paid for at the GS4 level, so about 18 something an hour. So that's our biggest program. We have summer, fall, spring interns. The applications typically open about 8 months in advance because you have to get a security clearance. You have to get a background investigation done. So our summer internship, which is the most popular, that one will open in the fall. typically. So that's the biggest one. For those who are rising sophomores or rising juniors, we have another program called the U.S. Foreign Service Internship Program. Similar to the other one, except for this one it gives you 2 internships, 2 paid internships in 2 consecutive summers. The first one would be domestic and the second one would be overseas. We also have virtual student internships that students can do during their school year from wherever they are. Those are unpaid, but it's only like 10 hours a week working with an office or an embassy overseas. Then we have the fellowships. We have 4 main fellowships that will help to pay for school and bring people into the career directly when they graduate. So the first 2, which are the original, were called the Pickering Fellowship and the Rangel Fellowship. They pay for 2 years of graduate school. They pay for 2 paid internships, 1 domestic and 1 abroad. And they bring you into the career. It's a pipeline fellowship where it brings you into the career as a Foreign Service Officer Generalist, which is what I am, when they graduate. And then so from the success of those, they take 90 students a year. The application period is in the fall. Then we opened another one called the FATE, the Foreign Affairs Information Technology Fellowship, which does the same thing but for students who want to study IT. And it pays for 2 years of grad school, or they can apply as sophomores too, and get their junior and senior year of undergrad paid for as well. 2 years of school, 2 paid internships, domestic, abroad, and the job as a Foreign Service Information Management Specialist. And there's one more called the Clark Fellowship, the William D. Clark. This is our newest one. It just launched last year. It's aimed at the special agents. So for diplomatic security special agents, it does the same thing. It pays for 2 years of graduate school, 2 internships, and a career.
Wow. Those are amazing opportunities. My 4th question is what are all the paths to get into the State Department? So the foreign or the civil.
Sure. So we have Foreign Service. There's 2 branches of the Foreign Service. And the Foreign Service are people like myself who move around every 2 to 3 years working at the embassies, the U.S. embassies abroad. We have 2 branches. Foreign Service Generalists, like myself. We have 5 different career tracks within the generalists. There's consular, management, public diplomacy, political, and economic. And then there's the Foreign Service Specialists. So we have generalists on one side and specialists, which we have 19 different career tracks with the specialists. And these are people who have specialized skill sets, like our engineers, construction engineers, our engineering security officers, our healthcare people, our financial management folks, the IT folks, the human resources officers, the 19 different career tracks for Foreign Service Specialists. So those are the 2 sides of the Foreign Service branch. And then we have civil service. So for people who don't want to move around the world, moving around every 2 to 3 years, we have civil service where they can go and work usually in the DC area, but they stay domestic and they don't move around, but they're working for the Department of State. So we have the 2 branches of Foreign Service, civil service. We have another program called the Consular Fellows Program, which will allow people who speak certain languages like Spanish, Portuguese, Arabic, or Mandarin to join the Foreign Service for a limited non-career appointment to do consular work, so to do the visa work, interviewing work, for a maximum of 5 years. And those are the primary ways of getting to the Foreign Service besides our student programs.
And my final question is, what tips or advice do you have for students or anyone really who's looking into the State Department?
So honestly, my main piece of advice is to be persistent. As you heard me speak about at the beginning, I didn't pass immediately my exam to get into the Foreign Service. It took time, it took effort, and all of our programs, the jobs, the student programs, they're going to be competitive. You have to really want them, and you have to really put effort into them, and you can't get discouraged. So if you don't get accepted the first time around or the second time around, don't give up. Keep on applying, keep going for it, and then hopefully eventually you'll find your way in. But it takes that time, it takes that effort. You have to be persistent.
For sure. That's really great advice. Thank you so much for meeting with me, and I hope this video is helpful to anyone who is looking for a career in the State Department.